So Twitter has been on fire, think since yesterday or so, and I'm on this topic on virginity. And a girl called Elizabeth Adewale came out and said virginity is a social construct and it should hold no value in the society. And I think owing to the fact that a whole lot of people came at her, she decided to make a defensive video, like I'll call it, and let's hear what she has to say before I proceed.
So I tweeted that virginity is a social construct and should not hold any value, and people lost their minds. I even appeared on Instablog for the first time on top this virginity matter. There's no insult I did not hear. I was called ashewo, I was called ugly, I was called barren. Some people said that I lost my virginity for free, so I'm trying to recruit other women to lose their virginities too. Most of these insults came from men who, by the way, are not virgins, but that one did not shock me. What shocked me was when women were also joining men to insult me. I was like, do you people even know what you're doing? Well, I said what I said and I stand by it. Let me even go further by saying that virginity does not exist. It is an idea created by society, particularly men, to control and police women. But because I am a nice and graceful person, I'm going to explain my standpoint and I'm going to back it with research. Please be open-minded. When I say virginity is a social construct, I mean it is an idea that is created and agreed upon by society. Nobody is born with virginity. What you are born with is a lack of sexual experience. There is no medical, biological, or scientific way to define virginity or to test for virginity. People love to scream, but the hymen. Do you know that the hymen has no biological or medical function? Some women are not even born with the hymen. So do we say those women are not born virgins or they are not born with virginity? Are you people hearing yourselves? And why is it only women that are expected to keep and prove their virginity? One man even said that men cannot be virgins because only women are born with the hymen. Oh my god. And you know the funny thing? Men want to marry virgins, but they keep sleeping around. They will not even date you if you don't agree to sleep with them. Those women that they have slept with, or those women that they are sleeping with, who do they want to leave them for? At least if you want to marry a virgin, be a virgin now. If being a virgin means you have value, then when you have sex, you lose your value, Abi. See, our mothers, they are valueless. Women that are raped or assaulted, they are valueless. Does that even make sense? Do you know being a virgin does not mean that you'll be treated better by men? If you are a virgin, they will say you are not mature, you are not a big girl. If you are not a virgin, they will say you are a slut or a shewo. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I even had someone tell me that she wanted to keep her hymen intact for her future husband, so she did anal instead. And I was shocked. So you did anal, you did oral, you use toys, you masturbate. But because penis has not entered your vagina, you think you are still a virgin. Can you see what we are saying? If you are still attaching your value to what is between your legs in this big 2025, I'm sorry for you. I never said you should sleep around though. I only said that people that are not having sex are no more valuable than people that are having sex. Because sex does not take away any value from you. Ireo.
Yeah. When you look at everything she said, there are some truths in it and there are some statements of unrealism in it. And it is true that virginity is a social construct. That is a fact. It is a social construct. And in the side where she said that some women aren't born with hymen, it's facts. She said some facts there. And some statements she made, I think they're just idealistic statements. They are far from realism. When the topic of virginity comes in place, I think it has to do with context. And so when you look at the cultural context of virginity, as much as you may want to, say it's a social construct, the following line that says, and it should not hold any value, cannot stand. It may be a social construct, but there's a reason why our culture actually constructed that. There's a reason for the social construction. And it is that reason for the social construction that now brings up, whether it holds value or not. Why would it be a social construct if it's not meant to hold value? And so now we begin to dig deeper and ask why is that value placed more on the female gender than the male gender. I think that is where for she probably, I don't know if she's interested in holding perhaps a more worthy conversation. I think for her it's more about proving her point and explaining to you why she said what she said. She made statements though to say that she's not saying that the people who actually are virgins or are not virgins are more valuable than the other class. No, she's just saying that it is a social construct that should hold no value. For me, this is where I'll come in. The reason why virginity would hold value from now till whenever it is, till tomorrow, is because men and women kind of differ in a way. Now it's like saying that a man's financial position in a society, is a social construct and should not hold value. That's how, if you flip it, you begin to realize that just that virginity is the currency, the female currency, but on the male side, it is the resource that he has that is his own currency. And so in that area, these two things are social constructs, but then they hold value because that is the exchange that comes in place when these two people eventually have to be together. If, for example, marriage wasn't in the picture at all, if we take marriage out of the way, which in truth, marriage is also a social invention, a cultural invention, which I think is patriarchal in nature and was meant to benefit women. Because I think I made a walk and I said that if not for marriage, women would have been left with unprotected motherhood. And so because of marriage, virginity is now held as something sacred. And I think that when you look at the male gender is likened to a cock. And then the female gender like hens. When you look at hens and cocks, you see the cocks just sleep with the hens and leave them like that to face all of their troubles. But then it would have happened so in men, right? But because our ancestors saw that if they let it be so, the women would be on the more losing end, as they would be left just like hens to cater for the babies of which both they and the cocks were responsible for. And so to prevent men from just impregnating women and leaving them with unprotected motherhood, marriage was invented to force the man, into responsibility. But then the man whom you'll be forcing into responsibility would definitely ask a question, right? If I'm to take all of this responsibility, in exchange for what? So I think chastity was what became the currency that our forefathers had to demand from women, while women had to demand in exchange for that provision. And so when you look at it very well, you see that it may be a social construct, but it holds value. And that value is, I think it is up to the women who want to get married. And I think a whole lot of women want to get married. Even women will say that marriage is not an achievement. Just of recent, Young Miami came out and said that she wants to get married and settle down. So someone had to say, we would not settle down with a woman who is a leftover of freak offs. So you see, it still comes down to the sexual purity and chastity. Chastity and virginity is the biggest currency that women can actually offer or give to men, because like Esther Villa wrote in her book, aside chastity, what can women give men that men cannot get for themselves, right? Especially looking at the modern men. Back then, our mothers at least owned the kitchen, and so most men were prohibited from being in the kitchen. So which meant that women held not only chastity currency, but also that homeliness, that ability to cook. They had the power to a man's belly because they determined what he ate. But when you look at the modern days now, and then you begin to ask, aside the chastity, that value, that purity, and the virginity itself, what is it that men cannot get on their own, or that could give men a reason to commit to women? Nothing, because men are hardworking, they can get money on their own. Food, these days lots of modern men can cook, they take care of themselves. So nearly everything men can have on their own, except that sex. The sex itself, when you look on a deeper spectrum, now it is almost everywhere, and so men can also get sex everywhere. But then there's one thing that could actually pull a man in, which is beyond sex itself, which is a woman's chaste and prudent side, which virginity is one of the top loads. Men used to say that if virginity did not mean anything, then a lot of women who are non-virgins, why do they try so hard to convince virgin women to lose their virginity? It is because they understand that socially, right, one holds value than the other. And dismantling that value would cripple everything, and it won't give men any more reason to even regard women in a sense. It's just a fact. But then she made a point to say that being a virgin does not determine how men will treat you. And I think that is a fact in there. She said something which is true. She said that most men would say that virginity is a big deal, but then would refuse to go into relationship with a woman who is not a virgin, right? And then would rather be with a woman who is not a virgin than go into relationship with a woman who is not a virgin, which is truth, because a lot of men don't want to be in sexless unions. But then I think that it is more intricate. When you ask most of the men why they don't want to be or would refuse being in a relationship with a woman who is a virgin, I think it's on a deeper level. And which comes down to the fact that, first of all, a lot of men are very sexually active. Lack of sex is going to be a big deal. If they be in a relationship with a woman who is a virgin, they won't have it, and it's definitely going to mess up with their mental state. Another thing is that you can actually be with a woman who is a virgin, stay in a sexless union for a while, only later on to find out that she's definitely going to go ahead and lose it to somebody else. I think it's the reason why a lot of men have refused to be in a sexless union with a woman. For they feel as though they can end up enduring all of this and still not have the woman, which are different intricate and conversations to have in this debate. But then I am just sticking to the statement: virginity is a social construct and should not hold any value. So I'm just saying that it definitely would hold value as long as marriage is in the equation, and as long as man and women will continue to come together and form a union. Culture always looking like that, and because women also definitely will continue to measure a man's value by his resources, his provisional capacity, virginity will continue to be held, or purity, the sexual purity, chastity will continue to be a big deal from the male perspective. So this is just my take on it. I definitely am very much open to contrasting opinions, and yes, this is my take, that virginity is of a truth, a social construct, but then it will definitely continue to hold value, and it should hold value, because I'll tell you why it should hold value. It is the only way that men can actually, also have a balance, and part of the reasons why men will continue to say virginity should be there. I'll tell you why. Now, the possibility of a virgin woman, engaging in marital promiscuity would be very slim compared to a non-virgin woman, which is a fact. When you meet non-virgins who have had more sexual experiences prior to your meeting, it's kind of a threat egotistically. This statement that says that it is a child who has tasted a food from outside that comes home to complain that his mother's food is not sweet, because the child has eaten here and there, and so now it's now making comparisons, and so could decide to eat here today and eat over there tomorrow. And because the concept of marriage itself is more like women are more like property in the true sense of marriage, and that men are actually purchasing a woman. Because when you look at marriage intricately, you would see that when it was invented for the sole aim of women providing an extra workforce for the man, an extra labor force on the farmland. And so he realized that getting a wife would provide him cheaper labor, and so he got a wife or wives, right? So when he wanted to get a wife, he paid, which made it bride price. So he was paying. So it was more like he was purchasing something, and he called it a bride price, meaning a bride was a maiden, and most maiden virgin, and so he paid for the virgin and brought her home. And because he wanted to guarantee that the children would be his own children, he made sure that the woman was a virgin. He measured the price of that woman by her chastity, right? And so I'm saying you should hold that value, because it is when you look at the current state, although I'm not saying that prior to this period we didn't experience it, but when you look at the level of paternity fraud in our current state, we can still attribute it to the high and the increased rate in non-virgin marriages. And when we also look at the increased rate in divorce and marital promiscuity, you realize that since virginity wasn't stopped being a big deal, the level at which divorce and promiscuity and paternity fraud increased. For if a man actually get married to a woman whom was a virgin, the level of such would be as low as anything else. And so I think these things that we need to consider when it comes to sensitive topics like this. And I mean, from a male angle also, we tend to have men who experience things like performance anxiety sexually, and they experience these things because most of the women they meet tend to be even more experienced than them, or probably have met more experienced guys than the men themselves, and tend to expect these things, which is normal of human beings. Humans are comparative. If I as a man has slept with another woman over there, when I meet another woman, I tend to compare, the sexual prowess between the two of them, and it applies to women themselves. So if a man meets a woman who is a non-virgin, has had sexual experiences prior to his meeting, she definitely will compare these things. And if he happens not to meet up with her past sexual experiences, there is the possibility that she will definitely look outside. This is not to take away the part or the point that probably even back then when women got married even as virgins, these things did not happen. But the point is that it did not happen on a large scale compared to how it's happening today. And yes, we have seen a whole lot of women who have married as virgins, who have married as non-virgins, and then have always, in most cases, returned back to most of their past experiences or past lovers. And so these things happen most times. And yes, we have seen women who got married as virgins, and yes, in some cases again, still engaged in marital promiscuity. These things happen, they do happen, but exceptions do not make the rule. And so I am in support of that. Yes, virginity is a social construct, but it should hold value. If not, we are going to experience a higher level of moral decadence than we've ever seen. Like they say, women are the gatekeepers of sex, while men are the deciders of commitment. And so if it's so, there's a reason why it's so, because if a woman goes out there, she can easily have sex with anybody she wants to have. If a woman wants to have sex with her, all she needs to do is go into her inbox and respond to wherever it is, or go out there and say hi to anybody who has been trying to get close to her, and she would have it. But men cannot, except maybe for affluent men who are rich. Those are the men that can have that easy access, or popular figures, maybe like Rema or Wizkid, or rich, individuals, what I mean. But anything aside that, men cannot always have sex at their own disposal like women do. And so society demanded that women actually place, a boundary in that regard. And so it is because of, that value. When you look very well, you see that we are now experiencing a high rise in the level of single mothers today. And when you look at it very well, you see that back then most men were compelled to get married before they would have sex. And yes, most cases they got married to virgin women and stuck with them. But these days now, even men who actually met a lot of women these days found no reason to stick to them because of the sexual or moral decadence sexually. Yes. And so if we take away the value from virginity, then we have handed free passport to female promiscuity. And when we do that, society eventually declines, because it is women who own the home. And then when the owners of the home are no longer there, then it means that the family structure will die. And the family structure is the greatest of all structures, but it is the one that gave birth to every other structure. It is the family that gave birth to the state. Without the family, the state cannot stand. And so it is very much important that it should hold value. I think it is oftentimes very easy for us in our own youthful, exuberant state to just think that most of these things that are culture invented for over 3,000 years now, we would just wake up one day in our own state of mind and think that it should be dismantled without giving it a more deeper consideration. It is important that we look at these things deeper, from our own fleeting angles, and just look at it more deeper, and we'll be able to arrive at that conclusion that our ancestors were right to place values on the very many things that they place values. As for me, I'm an agnostic, but every single day I support religion. I still talk in support of religion and will always support religion, because beyond my agnostic perspective, I see why our ancestors invented religion. And so it's like me waking up today to say that religion is a human invention and should not hold any value. It would never make sense to me personally who even says it, or who is not even a religious person, because I see its cultural value, I see its societal benefit, and I know that its consolatory values alone cannot be replaced by any other mechanism. I know personally that it is the greatest invisible police that works and even aids the government in peaceful cooperation and coexistence. And so, its impact is greater than just my mere eyes can see. So there's a whole lot. I like conversations like this, that open up different threads. But then I still state that virginity is a social construct of a truth, but should hold value. A big thumbs up to you. Let me see your name, Elizabeth Adewale. You stir the waters a little bit, and yes, it's good that you came up with your defensive video, and yes, it's still open to more debates and more debates. I think I like debates like this. Someday I'll set up something like this so we'll have more debates like this, and it's very important. And so that's it from me to you today, and yes, I'll see you again.